Master Sergeant Linda Chen, retired, sat in the security booth at the main gate of Fort Belvoir, Virginia, checking IDs and raising the barrier for vehicles entering the base. She was 56 years old, with graying hair cut military short, reading glasses perched on her nose, and hands that showed the slight tremor that came from too many close calls with high explosives. To the soldiers who showed their IDs at her window, she was just another retired veteran working a low-level security job to supplement her pension. They were polite but dismissive, barely looking at her as they handed over their CACs. "Morning, ma'am," a young soldier in his 20s said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Good morning, specialist. Have a good day." The barrier went up, the car drove through. Linda went back to her crossword puzzle. This was her life now. 8-hour shifts in a security booth, checking IDs, watching cars pass. It was mind-numbing work for someone who'd spent 33 years defusing bombs in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. But it was all she could get. 2 years ago, the Army had forced her into retirement. At 54, she'd been told she was aging out of explosive ordnance disposal work. Too slow, they said, reflexes not what they used to be. Time to make room for younger techs. Never mind that she'd served in Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan, and a dozen classified operations. Never mind that she'd disarmed more IEDs than anyone else in her unit. Never mind her 33 years of experience and knowledge that couldn't be taught in any school. She was too old, that was that. Linda had fought the retirement, had filed appeals, had pointed out that her annual fitness tests were still excellent, that her performance reviews were outstanding, that she'd never failed a recertification. But the decision came from above. New Army policy, EOD technicians had to retire at 55 regardless of capability. They wanted younger, faster, stronger. So Linda had retired, taken her pension, and tried to figure out what to do with the rest of her life. Turned out there wasn't much demand for 54-year-old female bomb techs in the civilian world. Private security companies wanted young men. Police departments had age limits. Even consulting firms preferred to hire recently retired techs in their 30s and 40s. She'd applied to teach at the Army's EOD school. They'd hired a 38-year-old man with half her experience instead. So now she checked IDs at the gate and tried not to think about the waste of it all. "Hey, Grandma, wake up," a voice jarred her from her thoughts. A young sergeant was at her window, smirking. "I've been sitting here for 30 seconds, you falling asleep on the job." Linda looked at the clock. He'd been there for 5 seconds. "ID, please, Sergeant." "Maybe they should set an age limit for security guards, too," he muttered to his passenger as he handed over his CAC. "Old folks falling asleep at the wheel." Linda scanned his ID, verified his access, and raised the barrier without comment. She'd learned not to engage with the mockery. It happened daily. Old lady, Grandma, should be in a rocking chair past her prime. She'd heard it all. Her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter, Amy. "Mom, please come to dinner Sunday. The kids miss you. I miss you." Linda texted back, "I'll be there, love you." Amy worried about her, thought she was depressed, isolated, not adjusting well to retirement. Amy was probably right, but what was Linda supposed to do about it? She'd been a soldier for 33 years. Being a soldier was who she was. Without that identity, she felt hollow. The day dragged on. More IDs, more cars, more dismissive glances from soldiers who had no idea who she was or what she'd done. At 1500 hours, Linda's supervisor stopped by the booth. "Chen, you can head out early. Johnson's coming in to cover the rest of your shift." "Sir, I'm scheduled until 1700. "Yeah, well, we're doing some training exercises on the south end of the base. Loud explosions. Didn't want you getting startled and, having a heart attack or something." Linda bit back her response. "Understood, sir." She gathered her things and left the booth. As she walked to her car, she heard the explosions from the training area. They were using C4, probably teaching the new EOD students about controlled detonations. She knew the sound like a musician knew notes. Could tell from the tone and duration exactly how much explosive had been used, what type, what the blast radius would be. But nobody asked her opinion. Nobody wanted her knowledge. She was just the old lady in the security booth. That evening, Linda sat in her small apartment watching the news. Her walls were mostly bare. She'd packed away the photos and awards from her military career because looking at them hurt too much. But one shadow box remained on the wall. Inside was her EOD badge, the crab as it was called, worn by qualified bomb techs. Beneath it were her ribbons, Bronze Stars, Purple Hearts, Army Commendation medals, and a photo of her team from Afghanistan 2012. 8 bomb techs, smiling despite the danger they faced daily. 5 of them were dead now. Killed defusing IEDs, killed by car bombs, killed by the very explosives they'd sworn to master. Linda was alive because she'd been good. Better than good, she'd been exceptional. She'd had an intuition about bombs, an ability to see the patterns that others missed. "You think like the bomb maker," her first instructor had told her 30 years ago. "That's rare, that's valuable, that'll keep you alive." It had kept her alive, but it hadn't kept her employed. Her phone rang, unknown number. "Hello?" "Master Sergeant Chen," a young male voice, formal. "This is Linda Chen. I'm retired, so it's just Ms. Chen now." "Ma'am, this is Captain Marcus Wade from the Fort Belvoir EOD unit. I'm sorry to bother you at home, but we have a situation, and someone suggested you might be able to help." Linda's pulse quickened. "What kind of situation?" "I can't discuss it over an unsecured line. Could you come to the base, to the EOD compound?" "When?" "Now if possible. Ma'am, this is urgent." Linda was already grabbing her jacket. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. She drove back to Fort Belvoir with a mixture of anxiety and something she hadn't felt in 2 years, purpose. At the gate, a different guard was on duty. He waved her through when she explained she'd been called in by EOD. The EOD compound was on the far side of the base, a secure area surrounded by concrete barriers and warning signs. Linda had worked here for 5 years before her retirement. Captain Wade met her at the entrance. He was in his early 30s, with the lean build and intense focus of an experienced bomb tech. Linda recognized him. He'd been a junior sergeant when she retired. "Ms. Chen, thank you for coming." He looked stressed, exhausted. "I know this is unusual, but we need your help." "What's going on, Captain?" He led her inside to the operations center. On a large screen was a video feed showing a device. A bomb, clearly, but unlike anything Linda had seen in recent years. "We received a credible threat 3 hours ago," Wade explained. "A device was placed in the federal courthouse in Alexandria. We've evacuated the building and established a perimeter. My team has been working on it for 2 hours, but we can't figure out how to disarm it." Linda studied the screen. The device was sophisticated, multiple redundant triggers, anti-tamper mechanisms, a design that seemed to blend techniques from different bomb-making traditions. "Have you identified the bomb maker?" she asked. "We believe so. Former Army EOD tech named Thomas Riker. Dishonorably discharged 5 years ago for theft and assault. Apparently he's been radicalized and is making threats against the government." Linda's blood ran cold. "Tommy Riker. You know him?" "I trained him 15 years ago when I was an instructor at the school. He was talented but unstable. We almost didn't let him graduate." She looked closer at the bomb on the screen, and she saw it, Riker's signature techniques, methods she'd taught him, twisted and perverted into something deadly. "This is designed to kill bomb techs," Linda said quietly. "Every time you try one disarm method, you trigger a secondary mechanism. It's a puzzle box designed by someone who knows exactly how EOD teams think." "Can you help us?" Wade asked. "I can try, but Captain, I'm retired. I'm not certified anymore if something goes wrong." "Ma'am, if we don't disarm this bomb in the next 4 hours, it's set to detonate. The courthouse is evacuated, but there are residential buildings nearby. Hundreds of people are at risk. We need the best. And according to everyone I've asked, that's you." Linda looked at the screen again, studied the device, felt the old analytical part of her mind spinning up, seeing patterns, identifying vulnerabilities. "Get me the technical specs on every component you've identified," she said. "And get me your best tech. We're going to need to work together." "Ma'am, about that," Wade looked uncomfortable. "My best tech is Sergeant Kowalski. He's 28, and when I told him I was calling you, he questioned whether someone your age could handle this." "Of course he did," Linda said. "Let me guess, he thinks I'm too old, too slow, out of touch with modern techniques." "Something like that." "Then let's go prove him wrong." The Alexandria Federal Courthouse was surrounded by police vehicles, fire trucks, and Army EOD response units. The entire block had been evacuated, and snipers were positioned on rooftops in case the bomber was watching. Linda arrived in Captain Wade's vehicle, wearing borrowed EOD gear. The bomb suit felt heavier than she remembered, or maybe she just felt every one of her 56 years. Sergeant Mike Kowalski met them at the command post. He was tall, fit, confident, everything the Army wanted in a modern bomb tech. His expression when he saw Linda was barely concealed skepticism. "This is our expert," he said to Wade. "Sir, with respect, she's been retired for 2 years, techniques have changed, equipment has changed." "Bombs haven't changed," Linda said quietly. "Physics doesn't retire, Sergeant." "Ma'am, I've been doing this for 8 years. I've disarmed over 200 IEDs in Afghanistan and Iraq. I know what I'm doing." "And yet you couldn't disarm this one." Kowalski's jaw tightened. "It's a complex device, we're being cautious." "You're being stumped," Linda corrected. "There's a difference, show me what you've tried." For the next hour, Kowalski walked her through every approach his team had attempted. They'd used X-ray, they'd deployed robots, they'd analyzed the electronic signatures. Every time they tried to access one component, sensors detected it and triggered defensive mechanisms. "It's like it knows what we're going to do before we do it," Kowalski said, frustrated. "That's because it does," Linda explained. "The bomb maker is Tommy Riker. I trained him. He knows exactly how EOD teams operate because he was trained the same way. Every standard procedure we have, he's designed a counter for." "So what do we do?" "We stop thinking like EOD techs and start thinking like Riker. What does he want? What's his goal?" Wade spoke up. "His manifesto says he wants to expose government corruption. He thinks the system is broken and needs to be destroyed." Linda studied the device schematics on the laptop. "No, that's what he says, but look at this bomb. It's not designed for maximum destruction. It's designed for maximum complexity. This is about ego. He wants to prove he's smarter than everyone, especially smarter than the people who trained him." "How does that help us?" Kowalski asked. "Because ego has a weakness, pride. Riker wants us to admire his work. He's left a signature, a way through the puzzle that only someone who knows him would see." She pointed to one component. "This junction here, it looks like a tamper trigger, but the placement is wrong. It's too obvious. Riker was never obvious. This is a decoy. The real trigger is—" She traced her finger across the schematic. "Here, hidden in what looks like a structural support." Kowalski leaned in, studying where she was pointing. "I don't see anything." "That's the point. You're looking for the threat. But Riker taught me something years ago, something I taught him back. He said the most dangerous part of a bomb is the part you think doesn't matter. He's using his own philosophy against us." "That's a hell of a gamble, ma'am," Wade said. "If you're wrong about that junction." "I'm not wrong. I know how Riker thinks. I know how he builds. And I know he can't resist putting his ego into his work." Kowalski shook his head. "Sir, we can't make a decision based on the guesswork of a retiree who hasn't touched a real bomb in 2 years. We need to stick to procedure." "Your procedures aren't working," Linda said sharply. "And I'm not guessing. I've disarmed more bombs than you've seen in your entire career, Sergeant. I was defusing IEDs in Iraq before you graduated high school." "And that's exactly the problem," Kowalski shot back. "This isn't Iraq. Techniques have evolved. Equipment has evolved. You're living in the past." "Bomb-making fundamentals haven't changed in 100 years, Linda said. "New technology, same principles, and the psychology of bomb makers definitely hasn't changed. They're still angry people trying to prove something. Once you understand the psychology, you understand the bomb." Wade held up his hand. "Both of you, enough. We're running out of time. Ms. Chen, are you confident in your assessment?" Linda looked at the schematic one more time, saw the patterns, saw Riker's fingerprints all over the design, saw the solution that he'd hidden in plain sight. "Yes, sir, I'm confident." "Then gear up, you're going in." Kowalski's eyes widened. "Sir, you can't be serious. She's 56 years old. What if her hands aren't steady? What if she can't handle the stress?" "My hands are fine," Linda said, holding them out. They were steady as rocks. The tremor she normally had was gone, pure adrenaline had smoothed it out. "And I've handled stress you can't imagine." "Captain Wade, this is insane." "Sergeant Kowalski, you're dismissed from this operation," Wade said firmly. You've been working for 8 hours straight. You're exhausted and you're letting your ego cloud your judgment. Step back. Kowalski looked like he wanted to argue, but military discipline won out. Yes, sir. He walked away, but not before shooting Linda a look that said this conversation wasn't over. Linda began putting on the full bomb suit, 85 pounds of Kevlar and armor designed to protect against blast and shrapnel. It was heavy, restrictive, and made every movement difficult. At 56, she felt every pound. But she'd worn the suit hundreds of times before. Muscle memory took over. Within minutes, she was fully geared up. Ms. Chen, Wade said quietly, "You don't have to do this. We can wait for the FBI's elite team. They're 2 hours out." "We don't have 2 hours. The timer shows 93 minutes. And by the time the FBI team gets briefed and makes their approach, it'll be too late." "I know, but I'm giving you a choice. You don't owe us anything. You were forced into retirement. You could walk away." Linda looked at the courthouse, at the surrounding buildings, at the faces of the cops and soldiers who were counting on EOD to save lives. "I didn't become a bomb tech to walk away," she said. "I did it to serve. That doesn't stop just because they took away my badge." She picked up her toolkit and walked toward the courthouse. The approach to the device was through a service corridor in the courthouse basement. Linda moved slowly in the heavy suit, her breathing controlled, her mind focused. She could hear Captain Wade in her earpiece. "Vitals look good, Ms. Chen. Heart rate is elevated but steady. You're doing great." "Talk to me about the device," Linda said. "What's the current status?" "No changes. Timer shows 87 minutes. No indication that it's detected your approach." "Good. Riker wants us to engage with it. He wants the challenge. A passive approach won't trigger the defensive mechanisms." Linda reached the device. Up close, it was even more complex than the video had shown. Multiple circuit boards, tangled wires, pressure sensors, motion detectors. A master class in bomb making from someone who'd been trained by the best. "I'm at the device," Linda said, "beginning assessment." She spent 10 minutes studying it from every angle, using her handheld X-ray to see through the external casing, mapping the internal components. And there, exactly where she'd predicted, was the hidden trigger disguised as a structural support. "Wade, I've confirmed my earlier assessment. The obvious tamper switch is a decoy. The real trigger is in the support bracket on the west side." "Copy that. How do you want to proceed?" "I need to access the power source first, cut the primary feed, but I can't do it the standard way because Riker will have anticipated that. I need to come in from underneath." "There's no access from underneath. The schematics show solid mounting." "The schematics are wrong, or rather they're showing what should be there. But Riker had to get power to this device somehow. He's drilled a channel through the floor. I can see the marks." "Ms. Chen, that's incredibly risky, if you're wrong." "I'm not wrong, trust me." Linda pulled out her tools and began carefully removing the floor panel beneath the device. It took 15 agonizing minutes, working slowly to avoid triggering vibration sensors. Finally, the panel came free, and there, exactly as she'd predicted, was a channel leading to the power source. "Got it," she breathed. "I'm accessing the primary feed now." Her hands moved with practiced precision, identifying the correct wire, preparing to cut it. 82 minutes on the timer, Wade updated. Linda cut the wire. The device went dark. Then 3 seconds later, it powered back up. "Backup power source," Linda said calmly, though her heart was racing. "Riker, you clever bastard." "Ms. Chen, are you okay?" "I'm fine." He anticipated the power cut. "There's a secondary battery hidden somewhere in the device. I need to find it and neutralize it before I can proceed." She studied the X-ray images again, looking for anything that might be a battery. But Riker had hidden it well, probably inside one of the components, camouflaged to look like something else. 78 minutes, Wade said, tension evident in his voice. Linda closed her eyes, blocking out the pressure, the time limit, everything except the problem in front of her. She thought about Riker, about the young soldier she'd trained 15 years ago. Cocky, brilliant, but ultimately flawed by his need to be the smartest person in the room. Where would he hide the battery? Where would his ego demand he put it? Then she knew. "It's in the timer assembly," she said. "He put the backup battery in the same housing as the countdown timer. It's elegant, It's arrogant. It's exactly what Riker would do. Can you access it? Working on it. Linda's hands moved across the device, removing panels, tracing wires, following the logic of Riker's design. With each layer she peeled back, she understood more of his intent. This wasn't just a bomb, it was a message. A middle finger to everyone who'd trained him, who'd discharged him, who'd dismissed him. And that arrogance was his weakness. Linda worked on the device for another 20 minutes, carefully exposing the timer assembly. Sweat ran down her face inside the bomb suit. The temperature in the basement was rising, or maybe it was just her, the stress manifesting as heat. 63 minutes, Captain Wade's voice came through her earpiece. Ms. Chen, how are you doing? Almost there. I've accessed the timer housing. The battery is exactly where I predicted, but it's wired with a tamper switch. If I remove it incorrectly, it triggers the detonator. Can you disarm it? Yes, but I need absolute silence for the next few minutes. No updates, no commentary. I need to focus. Understood, going radio silent. Linda studied the tamper switch. It was sophisticated, a mercury tilt sensor combined with a continuity checker. Any break in the circuit or any movement beyond a few degrees would complete the trigger circuit. She'd seen switches like this before. In Baghdad, in Kandahar, in a dozen other hellholes where clever bomb makers tried to kill bomb techs. But never one this well integrated. Riker had learned from the best, and he'd improved on what he'd learned. Linda pulled out a specialized tool, a continuity bypass that would maintain electrical flow while she removed the battery. It was delicate work, requiring steady hands and perfect timing. She positioned the bypass, held her breath, and made the connection. The circuit held, the bomb didn't detonate. Carefully, degree by degree, she removed the battery from its housing. It took 8 minutes. 8 minutes of absolute focus, of hands that couldn't shake, of breathing that had to stay controlled. Finally, the battery was free. Wade, I've removed the secondary power source. The device is now running on a tertiary capacitor that should drain in approximately 5 minutes. Once it's dead, we can safely extract the detonator. Outstanding work, Ms. Chen. Your wait. We're getting a call coming into the command post, someone claiming to be the bomber. Linda's blood went cold. Put it on speaker. A moment later, a voice she recognized filled her earpiece. Tommy Riker, older but unmistakable. Is anyone listening? I want to talk to whoever's trying to disarm my masterpiece. Captain Wade responded. This is Captain Wade, EOD. What do you want, Riker? I want to talk to the tech working on my device. Put them on. Wade looked at the video feed of Linda in the courthouse basement, then made a decision. You're on with the tech now. Hello, Riker said. Tell me, are you appreciating the craftsmanship, the elegance of the design? Linda stayed silent for a moment, then spoke. Hello, Tommy. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. No, that voice, that's not possible. It's possible, it's me, Master Sergeant Chen, or as you used to call me, Gunny. You're retired, you're not supposed to be there, this isn't right. Life's full of surprises, Tommy. Yours is about to be that your bomb is getting disarmed by the same person who taught you how to build it. Riker's voice rose, angry now. You can't disarm it, it's perfect. I've accounted for every standard procedure, every technique you taught me. You did, it's impressive work. You always were talented, but you made one mistake. Impossible, I've checked everything. There are no mistakes. Your mistake was assuming I'd still think like a teacher, that I'd be cautious, methodical, by the book. But Tommy, I taught those methods. I know their limitations, and I know that sometimes you have to throw out the book and trust your instincts. You're bluffing. You can't have gotten past the secondary power source. That switch is impossible to bypass. I bypassed it 7 minutes ago. The device is currently running on capacitor power, which is why you're panicking and calling. You can feel it slipping away from you. There was silence on the line. Why did you do this, Tommy? Linda asked. You had a career, you had purpose. What happened? What happened? Riker's voice was bitter. They kicked me out, said I wasn't fit for service, said I had anger issues, couldn't work with a team. They threw away 15 years of my life because I didn't smile enough at some asshole officer. So you decided to prove them right, to become exactly what they accused you of being. I decided to show them what they lost, to prove that I'm better than all of them. Better than the current EOD teams, better than the FBI, better than everyone. Better than me? Linda asked quietly. Yes, even better than you, Gunny. You were the best once, but you're old now, slow, retired. This bomb is beyond anything you've ever seen. Linda looked at the disarmed components around her. Actually, Tommy, it's exactly what I've seen. You took everything I taught you and made it more complex, but you didn't make it better. Complexity isn't sophistication. It's just ego. You're lying, you haven't disarmed it. The timer on your device currently shows 47 minutes, but it's no longer connected to the detonator. I've isolated the power source, bypassed your tamper switches, and neutralized your anti-handling devices. In about 2 minutes, when the capacitor drains, this bomb will be completely inert. And then the FBI is going to trace your call and find you. And you'll spend the rest of your life in prison, having proven nothing except that you wasted your talent. No, Riker screamed. It's perfect, you can't have. The line went dead. He'd hung up. Wade, Linda said, did you trace that call? FBI is on it. They think he was calling from a phone in Baltimore. They're moving to intercept now. Good, now let's finish this. Linda watched as the capacitor slowly drained. The timer flickered, dimmed, and finally went dark. The device was completely dead. She carefully removed the detonator, a sophisticated assembly that would have caused massive damage if triggered. Then she extracted the main explosive charge, a combination of C4 and homemade compounds that Riker had mixed himself. Device is clear, Linda announced. No further threat, beginning evidence collection for FBI. Outside, she could hear cheering from the command post. The crisis was over. An hour later, Linda emerged from the courthouse, exhausted but triumphant. She'd removed the bomb suit and was back in her regular clothes, jeans and a borrowed EOD unit polo. Captain Wade was waiting, along with half a dozen other EOD techs and bomb squad members. They applauded as she approached. Outstanding work, Ms. Chen, Wade said. You saved a lot of lives today. Just doing what I was trained to do, Captain. Sergeant Kowalski approached, looking humbled. Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I questioned your abilities based on your age. I was wrong. What you did in there was beyond anything I've ever seen. You weren't entirely wrong, Sergeant, Linda said. I am older, I am slower. My reflexes aren't what they were 20 years ago, but experience counts for something. Knowledge counts for something. And understanding the psychology of the bomb maker, that's something you can't learn from a manual. Will you teach me? Kowalski asked. I want to learn how to think the way you do. Linda smiled. I'd like that. A black SUV pulled up, and 2 FBI agents got out. Ms. Chen, we need to debrief you about the device and about your conversation with Riker. Of course. But before she could get in the SUV, another vehicle arrived. This one carried a general, 2 stars on his collar. Major General David Park, commander of the Army's EOD program. He approached Linda with an expression of wonder. Master Sergeant Chen, I've been following the situation from the Pentagon. What you did today was extraordinary. Thank you, sir. I also owe you an apology. 2 years ago, I signed the order that forced you into retirement. It was part of a broader policy initiative to reduce the average age of EOD personnel. We thought we were improving the program by bringing in younger techs. We were wrong. Linda said nothing, waiting. Watching you work today, seeing how you solved a problem that had our best people stumped, made me realize what we lost when we pushed out experienced operators like you. We thought age was a liability. We didn't see that experience was an asset. With respect, sir, I tried to tell you that. You didn't listen. You're right, we didn't, and I'm here to make that right if you'll let me. What did you have in mind? General Park pulled out a folder. I'm offering you a position as senior instructor at the EOD school. You'd be in charge of developing advanced curriculum, particularly focused on understanding bomb maker psychology and dealing with sophisticated devices. The position comes with a GS-14 pay grade and full benefits. Linda took the folder, opened it, read through the offer. It was generous, more than generous. There's one condition, she said. Name it. I want the mandatory retirement age for EOD personnel changed. Not eliminated. I understand there are legitimate safety concerns, but it should be based on capability, not arbitrary age. Annual assessments, fitness tests, performance reviews. If someone can do the job, they should be allowed to do it, regardless of age. General Park nodded. I'll take that recommendation to the Secretary of the Army. I think, given what happened today, it'll be well received. Then I accept the position. They shook hands, and Linda felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Valued, respected, necessary. She was back where she belonged. 6 months later, Linda stood at the front of a classroom at the U.S. Army EOD school at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. 30 students sat before her, young men and women training to become bomb disposal technicians. Psychology, she told them, is as important as technical knowledge. You need to understand why someone builds a bomb, what they're trying to accomplish, how their ego and anger shape their design choices. A young female student raised her hand. Ma'am, how do you learn that? Is there a course? Experience is the course, Linda said. Every bomb you encounter teaches you something about the person who built it. Over time, you start to see patterns, and those patterns can save your life. She pulled up a slide showing the device from the Alexandria courthouse. 6 months ago, I was called out of retirement to disarm this device. It was built by a former EOD tech named Tommy Riker, someone I'd trained years earlier. The bomb was sophisticated, complex, designed to kill other bomb techs. She walked through the details of the device, explaining Riker's techniques, the psychological profile that had helped her understand how to approach it. The key was recognizing that Riker's ego was his weakness. He wanted to prove he was the smartest person in the room. That meant he had to make the bomb clever, not just deadly, and clever bombs have patterns. They have signatures. Once I understood his signature, I could predict where he'd hidden the vulnerabilities. Another student raised his hand. Ma'am, what happened to Riker? He was arrested in Baltimore 30 minutes after I disarmed his bomb. He's currently serving 25 years in federal prison for domestic terrorism. And because his device was disarmed intact, the FBI was able to analyze it and identify 2 other bomb makers he'd been working with. All 3 are now in custody. After the class, Linda returned to her office. It was a small space, but it was hers. The walls were covered with technical diagrams, photos from her deployments, and letters from students she'd taught. Sergeant Kowalski appeared in her doorway. He'd been assigned to the school as an instructor as well, working alongside Linda. Ma'am, got a minute? Of course, come in. Kowalski sat down. I wanted to update you on something. Remember how you asked me to track the career outcomes of female EOD techs? Yes, what did you find? The data is troubling. Women are leaving EOD at 3 times the rate of men. Not because of performance issues, their scores are actually slightly higher on average, but because of workplace culture. Harassment, exclusion from informal mentoring networks, assumptions that they're not as capable. Linda sighed. Same problems I faced 30 years ago. I'd hoped things had changed. They're changing now. Since your story went public, how you were forced into retirement and then proved you were still one of the best. There's been a lot of scrutiny on how the Army treats experienced personnel, especially women. General Park has launched an initiative to address retention of female EOD techs. That's good, but initiatives aren't enough. We need culture change. We need younger male techs like you to stand up when they see discrimination. To mentor women the same way you'd mentor men, to judge people on capability, not demographics. Agreed, which is why I wanted to ask your advice on something. There's a female sergeant in my unit, brilliant tech, but she's getting pushback from some of the old-school guys. They don't take her seriously. How do I support her without making it seem like she needs special protection? Linda thought about it. You support her by giving her the same opportunities you'd give anyone else. Hard assignments, leadership roles, chances to prove herself. And when someone disrespects her, you call it out immediately. Not because she's a woman who needs protecting, but because disrespecting any team member is unacceptable. That makes sense. And Kowalski, thank you for asking, for caring. The fact that you're even thinking about these issues means the culture is changing. That evening, Linda had dinner at her daughter Amy's house. Her 2 grandchildren, 7-year-old Marcus and 5-year-old Stella, were excited to see her. Grandma, tell us about the bomb, Marcus demanded. Marcus, we don't talk about that at dinner, Amy said. Why not? Grandma's a hero. She saved people. Linda smiled. It's okay. Amy let me tell them the appropriate version. She explained, in child-friendly terms, how she'd used her knowledge and experience to solve a difficult problem. How being older sometimes meant being wiser. How the things you learn over a lifetime can help you in unexpected ways. "When I grow up, I want to be a bomb person like you," Stella announced. "EOD Tech," Linda corrected. "And you can be anything you want to be, sweetheart. Just work hard, never stop learning, and don't let anyone tell you that you're too young, too old, too anything to pursue your dreams." After the kids went to bed, Amy poured 2 glasses of wine and sat with Linda on the back porch. "You seem happy, Mom, happier than I've seen you in years." "I am happy. I'm doing meaningful work again, teaching the next generation, making a difference. I was so worried about you after they forced you to retire. You seemed lost." "I was lost. I defined myself by my job for so long that when it was taken away, I didn't know who I was anymore. Working security at the gate, I felt invisible, worthless." "But you weren't. You were never worthless." "I know that now, but at the time it was hard to see. Everyone treated me like I was past my usefulness, old, expendable. And then you proved them all wrong." Linda smiled. "I proved that experience matters, that knowledge doesn't expire, that someone who's 56 can still contribute, can still perform, can still teach." Her phone buzzed. A text from General Park. "Need you in D.C. next week. Secretary of the Army wants to discuss the new retention policy. Your input is crucial." Linda texted back, "I'll be there." "Work?" Amy asked. "Always, but good work, important work." 1 year after disarming the Alexandria bomb, Linda stood in the Pentagon, addressing a room full of senior military leaders and civilian officials. The mandatory retirement age policy for EOD personnel was well-intentioned, she said, but it was flawed. It assumed that age automatically equals decreased capability. The data doesn't support that assumption. She pulled up statistics on a screen. EOD techs in their 50s have the lowest error rates, the highest success rates on complex devices, and the best safety records. Why? Because they have experience. They've seen patterns that younger techs haven't encountered yet. They understand the psychology of bomb making in ways that can't be taught in a classroom. "But ma'am," a colonel objected, "what about physical limitations? EOD work is demanding. Wearing an 85-pound bomb suit in extreme heat, working in confined spaces." "Which is why I'm not advocating for eliminating standards," Linda interrupted. "I'm advocating for making them performance-based, not age-based. Annual fitness tests, psychological evaluations, technical proficiency assessments. If someone passes those evaluations, they should be allowed to continue serving, regardless of whether they're 35 or 55. Another officer spoke up. "Ms. Chen, what about the argument that we need to make room for younger personnel, that we need fresh perspectives?" "Fresh perspectives are valuable, but so is institutional knowledge. The ideal EOD unit has a mix, young techs who bring new ideas and energy, and experienced techs who provide wisdom and mentorship. When you force out everyone over 55, you lose that balance. You lose the teachers. You lose the people who can pass on lessons learned from decades of operations." The discussion continued for 2 hours. By the end, the committee had voted to adopt Linda's recommendations. The mandatory retirement age for EOD personnel would be replaced with a capability-based assessment system. It was a victory, not just for Linda, but for every experienced operator who'd been pushed aside. 5 years after that day at the Alexandria courthouse, Linda celebrated her 61st birthday at a promotion ceremony. She was being promoted to the position of Chief Master Instructor for the entire EOD school, a newly created civilian position that put her in charge of all curriculum development and instructor training. General Park, now retired himself, attended the ceremony. "When I forced Linda Chen into retirement 7 years ago," he said in his speech, "I thought I was following sound policy. I thought I was making the EOD program stronger by bringing in younger blood. I was wrong. And Linda's work since then, both disarming that device and reforming our personnel policies, has made the program stronger than I ever could have imagined." After the ceremony, Tommy Riker's name came up. He was still in prison, but he'd written to Linda. The letter was simple. "Gunny, I've had a lot of time to think about what I did and why. You were right about the ego thing. I needed to prove I was the smartest, and it blinded me to everything else. I'm getting help now. Therapy, anger management. I'll never be free, but maybe I can be better. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. Linda had written back, offering encouragement and suggesting resources for rehabilitation. Even after everything, she believed in redemption, because she'd experienced it herself. 10 years after disarming the bomb, Linda stood at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. She was 71 now, officially retired again, but still consulting for the EOD program on complex cases. She was there to honor a fallen friend, a bomb tech she'd served with in Iraq who'd recently passed away from complications related to his service. As she stood before the wall, a young woman in Army uniform approached. "Excuse me, are you Dr. Linda Chen?" Linda turned. "I am, though I'm not a doctor." "You're Dr. Chen to me, ma'am. I wrote my doctoral thesis on EOD tactics based on your teaching methods. I'm Captain Sarah Rodriguez. I graduated from the EOD school 5 years ago. You were my instructor for advanced device analysis." Linda remembered her, brilliant student, top of her class. "Captain Rodriguez, how are you?" "I'm good, ma'am. I'm assigned to a special operations unit now, and I wanted to thank you for everything you taught me, for fighting to keep experienced techs in the program, for showing women like me that we belong." "You always belonged, Captain. You earned your place." "I know, but it helps to have proof. To see someone like you who faced discrimination, who was pushed out, who fought back and won. That gives the rest of us hope." They talked for a while, comparing notes on recent operations, discussing new bomb-making techniques emerging from conflict zones. As Rodriguez walked away, Linda felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was her legacy, not the bombs she'd disarmed, though there were hundreds, not the awards she'd received, though they were significant. Her legacy was the students she'd taught, the policies she'd changed, the doors she'd opened for the next generation. They'd said she was too old for duty. But when the bomb no one could touch threatened hundreds of lives, experience had proven more valuable than youth. Knowledge had trumped assumption. And a 61-year-old, retired, sergeant had shown that expertise doesn't have an expiration date. Linda Chen had spent 33 years serving her country in uniform. And she'd spent another 10 years serving it out of uniform. Because service wasn't about the uniform, it was about the mission. And her mission, to protect lives, to pass on knowledge, to make sure the next generation was ready, would never end. Not as long as she had breath in her body and knowledge in her mind. They'd said she was too old. She'd proved them wrong. And in doing so, she'd changed an entire system. That was worth more than any medal. That was a life well lived. That was service. Always.